Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to talk about session 0. That is the character development portion of your Traveler campaign. It's got to be one of the earliest things you do, of course, and a lot of what happens in your session 0 is going to shape your campaign going forward. Now, session 0 is also about choosing your rules. Here we go. The very first set of rules, the most current set of rules. Each of these works very well for Traveler, and they interchange very nicely. But you do need to pick which set of rules you're going to be using for Traveler. Whether you're an old Traveler guy who's played forever, or you're just coming back from having played Traveler years and years ago, to somebody who's just starting out and maybe getting used to the new rules in Mongoose, you're going to need to pick a rule set and then set up your session 0. So today we're going to talk about the rule set, session 0, and why either way as a game master, you're going to be doing a session 0. Today on page 121. All right, what is a session 0 in Traveler? Well, session 0 is a relatively new term, at least in my experience, having to do with creating your character. I don't know if it came out of D&D 5th edition or it perhaps is even older than that. I don't really know. It's a new expression to my experience. And what it refers to is the time where you get together and you make the characters going forward in your campaign. The way we used to play games like D&D was the player characters would either come in with characters pre-generated that they've rolled at home. The DM would look at them and approve it or not approve it, depending on what the player character claimed to have rolled. The player, rather, claimed to have rolled. And we would just sit down and start playing. There were other times that we did session 0s for D&D where we would actually sit and we would roll up the characters. I mention this because that's how we also used to do Traveler. I was part of many session 0s long before we called them that, where we just sat around and rolled up characters for Traveler. Sometimes it'd be 2 of us, myself and my GM. Sometimes it would be 3 or 4 of us. And we'd make up our characters, and in the old system, under the little black book system, you'd roll it up and maybe it'd die. Or maybe you'd get a character that had an admin 4. Yes, an admin 4. Looking at you, Robert LaSalle, my Traveler character who went on to become a captain in the Imperial Navy in one of the only campaigns we ever did where we were part of the Imperial Navy. My character rolled an admin 4, was his best trait. So everyone agreed that he'd become captain, and then we agreed that beforehand, if I was, quote, captain, unquote, that we as a group would discuss all things, and then I would go ahead and say, make it so. So that's one thing you have to be very careful of if you're going to go in doing an ongoing military campaign, is if you're going to have a captain, it's got to be somebody that's going to be ready to not kind of take over and be the be-all and end-all of the campaign. He's got to be somebody who's going to be willing to still role play and let the player characters who are, quote, under him, unquote, continue to have fun. So that can be a tricky balancing act. You know your group better than me. So before you do your Milieu 0, you've chosen when you're going to set it. In my case, it's going to be 1105 of the 3rd Imperium. Where you're going to set it. In my case, it's going to be in District 268. And the style of campaign, which in my case, they're going to just be typical travelers. They've finished their tours of duty and they've decided to go ahead and make their fortune. And now we're going to generate the characters and we're going to see how the characters go. Now, you don't have to decide that last bit until you roll the characters. If you have some characters that would work better in some other setup, maybe you roll, and everybody wants to play somebody who was a former Marine by coincidence, you might end up with a mercenary campaign in your hand that you wouldn't even think about. So that's what session 0 is all about, is deciding the finality of the breadth of the campaign. So in our case, my players are more experienced, but my players also all work, have families, have other hobbies, and have 3 to 5 hours a week at most to devote to a game. So I asked them, okay, we're starting up a new Traveler campaign. You guys have been through session 0s before. Are we doing a session 0? To which they all said no. They didn't want to spend a whole night just sitting rolling characters. They would rather that I create the characters for them. They have some final say in fleshing the characters out a little bit, and then we start the game. I've done this before in Traveler many times. It's not a problem for me. So now the next part to choose is, okay, I'm going to do a session 0. I've got my campaign. What rule set am I going to use? Well, if I'm an old traveler, and I am, I might want to just stay with the original, now called Classic Traveler, with its basic stuff because I'm most familiar with it. I love Basic Traveler. I love what you can do with the game, but I'm going to be going with the newest rule set, or have gone with the newest rule set, which is going to be Mongoose, specifically the 2022 core rulebook update. I like this book a great deal. I think this brings a lot of nice, clean work for Traveler, for running a Traveler campaign. Can be found between these covers. I recommend it entirely, by the way. And I love the idea that I can take almost anything directly out of this and plug it into this. They are just tremendously compatible. It's still a 2d6 system. This one just has had 40 plus years of maturity to refine this rule and that rule and why this skill does what it does and why this skill was useless. Let's take it out. So for my campaign, I'm going with Core Rulebook 2022 update. So now I've established that there won't be a session 0. Oh, wait. Yeah, there is. Session 0 just turned out to be a one-man game, me. So you sit with dice and you roll up characters. I had asked each of my players, I gave them the various choices. They're all familiar with Traveler, so they knew them. They haven't played a 2d6 version of Traveler, by the way, since the very early 2000s. I went over for a very long time to T20 and stayed there for a long time. And then I have popped back and forth once or twice into the 2d6, but in a real campaign, it's been since the early 2000s. We've actually even had a couple people come and go from our group since the last time I ran just a 2d6 Traveler game, a Traveler campaign. So it's exciting to be in one again, and it's exciting for the group to be interested in picking this up. Now I say that, my players have always been very open-minded as far as sitting down and trying game systems. They've all played Traveler over the years. They all like Traveler a great deal, and we have a lot of fun when we play Traveler. That being said, our primary game is Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, AD&D. To that point, my wife is not a huge fan of science fiction. She likes Star Wars and Star Trek and has watched plenty of other things with me, but she's not a tremendous fan of role-playing it. So she made it clear right away that she would be happy to take a few weeks off when we were on Traveler. She would not be part of the group. So that may also happen. You might have a player who's just not interested in playing it. Stay amiable. Obviously, I'm married to her, so I've got to stay amiable, but I would anyway. If a player doesn't want to play, great. Just make it clear that there is going to be this going on for a little bit, and maybe they'll have to skip a session or two. All my other players had said, hey, let's go. So I've got, at this point, 3 players that are going to be in my Traveler campaign, and that is my son Patrick, my friend Roy, and my friend Craig. My other son is away at college, Adam, and he'll be back and he'll play. I'll have a character ready for him to go. And the way we handle that, by the way, is he's just there. We don't do a lot of stuff as far as, how are we going to weave him into the story? Now, if I'm in a break in the campaign when he comes back from school and he can play again for a couple of months and I want to include him, yeah, I might do a scenario where they meet his character and I integrate him. But if they're in jump space and I don't want to change the story arc I'm on, and the timing is that he's come home and he wants to play, he's on the ship, he's been on the ship the whole time, and let's just go forward. I don't sweat that kind of minutia in my campaign. I would rather everybody just have fun than worry about the true storytelling that I'm doing. Because honestly, I change my story sometimes as I'm going. And that brings me to the next topic, which is going to be canon versus non-canon. If you want to be true canon and run everything exactly as written, go nuts. That's entirely up to you. I will say right now, I have never run anything in any game ever exactly as written. I've always changed stuff. There's always something in a game, the way it's written, it doesn't suit how you want to play. The D&D module Tomb of Horrors leaps to mind. If you play that as written, you have fun, the players have a crappy night. I don't like that. I've changed that around. I've run Tomb of Horrors many times. I've changed a lot of the stuff in there. Tomb of Horrors is a tournament module that's really about testing and ultimately killing your player characters. I don't like to play D&D or any game that way, so I change it around. So I do the same here. If I'm chosen a planet and the group is on the planet and I decide that the planet has a class B starport instead of a class C, I simply note it in my notes. I don't really care that canon says it's a C. Maybe it just made B status. Maybe there was a building boom right in this area because they found some mineral that's useful on the planet and they had to upgrade the facility. I simply change it in my notes and go forward. I recommend everybody do that. And, I've lost those notes. That was a year ago that I changed it from a B to a C. Oh well, I'm not going to sweat that kind of detail. Now, I try to be consistent in my game. If I make a minor error like that, I don't worry about it. I want to have fun. The players want to have fun. Sometimes the players will remind me of something that I've said in the game, and I'll go, oh, hey, you're right. I'll check my notes and find out where I was headed with it, and then I'll keep it or change it as I choose. So my point is the game is yours. Do anything you want. You want to have fun. Your players want to have fun. Everybody's there to enjoy their night and enjoy their characters and enjoy the session, not there to beat themselves up over rules and minutia. So that's me and my soapbox. I'm off my soapbox now. Back to my session 0. For my campaign, I asked them, do you want to be a Marine? Do you want to have been in the Scouts? Do you want to be in the Navy? They all said, whatever you pick is fine. Left a little bit of a burden on me, but that's okay. I know these guys pretty well. My son Patrick has been gaming with us the shortest time he's actually been gaming officially at our table, and that's going on about 12 years. Prior to that, I had taught Pat to play any game we've ever played, including D&D, Battletech, Silent Death, Traveler, Gamma World. My boys have been playing these since they were 3-4 years old. They've seen me play it their entire lives. So they're very familiar with the concept of role-playing. They're both excellent natural role players. So I know these people really well. I've gamed with Roy for 25 years. I've gamed with Craig with a slight gap in the mid 80s. I've gamed with Craig for over 40 years. So I know these guys pretty well, and I've been their primary GM in almost every game, or in every game. I'm the primary GM at the table. So I went ahead and I picked their character classes, or I'm sorry, their careers. Can't say character classes, it's Traveler. I picked the careers and rolled the characters, and then what I did was I left 1 or 2 things unfinished on their characters. There's the character interaction, where you can work on your backstory a little bit in the Mongoose rules, where you can decide your characters knew each other, and maybe they were on the run from some thugs. So one of your characters had to learn how to, evade somebody in a dirty alley while the other guy didn't know pistols real well but fired his gun. So the one guy gets streetwise for the evasion in the alley, and the other guy gets pistol 1. That's a nice element out of the core rulebook. That's the part that I let them go ahead and make the final decision on. They each got to interact with each other and pick what that skill was going to be. So that helped them flesh out and finalize the characters. In this campaign, one of the characters is a scout and did get a scout ship as a mustering out benefit. I went ahead with that because I like the scout. I like that as a great jumping off point. The players, especially if they're going to be nominal merchants but more adventurer type guys, having a scout ship is a great way to relieve some of the financial burden and let the players just enjoy themselves. So when I came up with the scout ship benefit, I said sure. And of course, one player, the former scout, he is the quote captain unquote. But everything is decided by the group, and we go from there. Again, mature role players, we don't have to worry about the authority situation. So that is my take on session 0. I like them. I like doing them. I think they're fun. I also understand that people sometimes don't have the time to devote to them and don't make the choice to do them. And I respect that. Either way, I have a session 0, and I have not developed my son Adam's character yet. I wanted to see where the campaign was headed a little bit before I decided what he was going to play. He also has told me he doesn't care, just roll something. So that's my take on session 0. We're going to take a look at some of the skills in the next session and how they're utilized throughout the game, and maybe some sources of where you can find other skills outside of the Traveler game. So that's all I've got to say today on page 121. Thanks for listening. Please remember the Patreon. I want to keep the channel going. I'm going to need a little help with that. So if you can take a look at the Patreon, I would appreciate it. And if you have any ideas for future things you want me to cover in the Traveller campaign series, please let me know. Or any other ideas for Traveller or other campaigns, please let me know. So that's it for today from page 121. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.